Hello, welcome everyone to the MuseScore Café for today, Wednesday. I always gotta look at the date, don't I? May 27th, 2020. And this is my regular series of informal chats where I talk about some aspect of MuseScore and music making. My name is Marc Sabatella, the Director of Education for MuseScore. And so the topic that I've chosen to talk about today is accidentals. Um, Everything having to do with accidentals, basically. Um, and it's might not seem like a particularly big topic, and that's okay. There's bigger topics and smaller topics, but there's a lot to say about accidentals and how they're used in music and how MuseScore supports them and how this has kind of changed over the years. So, yeah, I just want to show some things. So the very first thing that I want to do, actually, as far as this goes, is uh, I want to make sure that we are in not the default basic workspace. And let me show you why. Because some of the things I want to show you will require you to not be in the basic workspace. So if you're in the basic workspace, which is what you're in kind of by default when you first start MuseScore, if you accept all the defaults, you'll see that there's only a sharp sign, a natural sign, and a flat sign. There's no double sharp or double flat here on the toolbar. And if we open the accidentals palette, we see pretty much the same thing. We see those three plus the ability to add accidentals. Um, so, I mean, add brackets to the accidental. So a part of what we're going to be looking at today is going to require more than that. So I definitely want to switch to the advanced workspace. So I'm going to do that here. The advanced workspace has a lot more controls in it. It's got, as you can see, the double sharp and the double flat. It also has all these like double dots, triple dots, quadruple dots. To me, that's too much. I've actually created my own custom workspace in which I get rid of some of that stuff. But let's go with the advanced workspace for now. And then if I open the accidentals palette, you're going to see, all right, now we have the double sharp and double flat. We also have these special accidentals. These were added. I don't remember exactly when, 3.3, 3.4, it's hard for me to keep track of sometimes. But these are accidentals so that you can show after, say, a double flat. Well, yeah, let me just do that. If I enter a C, a D double flat, and then and I'm just doing this by clicking, as you can see, I clicked the note. And then if I want a D flat after that, if I just added a D flat, I mean, that's fine. This is going to be interpreted correctly by MuseScore. It's a D double flat and then a D flat. But to the reader, it's a little bit unclear if this flat really means, does that mean more flat than it already was? So if instead of that, if I use this natural flat accidental, that clarifies that. So already I'm getting way off into the weeds of esoteric things, but that's okay. We're just kind of taking this as we go. So really what I want to do is talk about the basic mechanics of adding accidentals first, and then we'll look at some specific situations and musical situations. So the normal way that I personally add accidentals usually is with the arrow keys. So if I had wanted a D flat, I just use the down arrow. As I go down, it's going to keep going down and adding flats on the way. But you'll notice it did not give me a D double flat, right? Well, how often do I need a D double flat? Not that often. If I'm not happy with how it chose to spell that, like I had, on the way up, it's going to spell everything with sharps. And notice it doesn't give me a B sharp here, it gives me a C. Just like on the way down, it doesn't give me a C flat, it gives me a B. It actually obeys the key signature. If the note is in the key, it's going to prefer that spelling. So for instance, when I go to A and hit the down arrow here, it's going to give me an A flat. But if I was in the key of A, which has a G sharp in it, now when I hit the down arrow, I'm going to get that G sharp. It's going to give me what's in the key by default. So good. I'm glad you like the weeds because I'm all about them. So If I decide, you know what, I really wanted that D double flat, like, let's go back up to D. D, oh, down one was C sharp. I didn't even get a D flat. What if I wanted a D flat? Well, I can press J. J will just change the spelling of the note that I just entered. So now I've got my D flat. And then if I enter another D flat, and this time I want a D double flat, well, I can hit J again. It gives me the D double flat. If I hit J again, it's going to give me B sharp. It's going to kind of cycle through all the different spellings of that pitch. So, there's my double flat. So for me as a keyboard user, I'm used to using the arrow keys to do things. It's very comfortable for me. It's great. However, there are definitely those who prefer not to use the keyboard for things, or prefer not to use the arrow keys in particular, because when you use the arrow keys, you hear, like if I want to enter, say, an E flat, I go E flat. Well, that means I heard the E natural first. I would say, yeah, and J is a command that you only know about by reading the manual or watching my videos, basically. I think maybe it's under, might be in here somewhere. I'm actually not even sure. It's not the same as respell pitches. That kind of looks at an entire measure at a time and tries to respell things. I'm not actually sure if that command is in a menu anywhere, to be honest. It might only be something that you'd have to have read about. But it does end up being pretty useful. So anyhow, when I entered that E flat, I pressed E and then down arrow. Well, that meant I heard the E first. And some people don't like hearing the wrong pitch first when they're entering the notes. They'd rather just enter the E flat right off the bat. So as of 3.2, 3.3, again, I forget exactly when we made this change. We have now changed the algorithm for how these toolbar buttons work, where they used to work the same way as the arrow keys. You'd enter an E and then you press the toolbar button and it would add a flat to that note. Now they work more the way the duration buttons work, which is to say you select the accidental first, then you type your E, and boom, you get your E. Or let me enter a G flat this time. I could, instead of typing, you can click. But the same idea being that you can not have to hear the wrong pitch first. So if you're in the habit of, if that suits your way of thinking better, select the accidental first, then the note, by all means, that is now a thing. So can I change the whole score to respell accidentals? So yes, you can in a couple ways. Let me come back to that in just a minute. What I want to do first, though, is I want to complete this thought about the flats and sharps here. About keyboard entry. So for right now, by default, the flat sign. Oh, look at that! Alt R. I customized shortcuts, and I never remember them. W, Q, and R. W and Q are used in MuseScore to change the duration of a note. Like Q, like check this out. Q will take that quarter note and turn it into an eighth note. And then W will double its duration. So I think I came up with this idea of Alt Q. Whoops, that was not Alt Q. Alt Q to apply Alt W. Yeah, I don't remember how I did that, to be honest. Alt Q. I don't know why Q is that. I don't know if I customized that, but in any case, I can't remember those, right? Obviously. So I'm going to go to Edit, Preferences, and then Shortcuts. And I think if I type accidental, let's see, do I get all of them there? No, I don't. So I'm going to type flat, and there should have been, how about sharp? No? How about add? I'm not actually, so you get to watch me flounder a little bit here. Yes, I customized it. Yeah, thanks. So I can't remember the name of the dang command. I'm surprised that just searching for flat didn't do it, but I think it has to match the beginning of the command. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I already know Alt Q was one of them, right? So I'm going to try to define Alt Q as a shortcut for some other random thing. and I'm going to say Alt-Q, and it says, oh, shortcut conflicts with no input. Oh, that's why I couldn't search on it, because it's actually using the natural sign and the flat sign. So I can't search on that. I'm not a fan. Not a fan. Might have to have a word with someone about that. But okay, so now I know the command is called note input : all right, here's my flat. All right, so if I click this and say reset shortcut to default, it goes away. It goes, all right, so I'm going to pick something a little more easier for me to remember. So I'm going to pick, and I think I picked these because I don't know why I picked them. I was trying to be somewhat memorable. I'm going to go, since I know that Alt Q and double, I'm going to say Alt Q is going to be to flat, and that's currently natural, right? So I got to clear that one first. Reset to default, reset this one to default. Actually, for sharp, I want Alt W. I want Alt define. I want Alt Q for flat. And the idea is it seems like it's somehow lessening the note, right? Making it flatter. So I like connecting it somehow to the idea of making it, the duration shorter. So flat and shorter duration seem like they go together. All right, and for entering a natural, see, I can't use, I don't even know. I'm going to use equals, all equals. Why equals? Because in ABC music notation, equals is a natural sign. So that's what I'm going to do. Got me. All right, so there we go. And if I wanted to do double flats and double sharps, I could do that too. So how about Alt B? Is that taken? Nope. Alt B is. I mean, some people would want Alt B for double flat. I mean, for single flat, right? But I've kind of got this other thing going. I'm never going to remember this. That's okay. But I'm just saying, if you want to do this, you can. So there's your that. And then how about Alt X? Is that available? That would be kind of nice. Yes. All right. So now I have some shortcuts. And now I can enter all those things just using keyboard shortcuts in that way. Oops, I accidentally did something. I am using right now the alpha of 3.5, which I've showed off a little bit here before. We probably will have the beta version coming soon that fixes some bugs here and there. So let's see how this works now. If I go Alt Q, notice it selected the flat on the toolbar, and now when I type E, I get an E flat. All right, so a question came up about respelling the whole score to respell accidentals. All right, now first of all, I can select a whole measure and press J, and it's going to cycle through all the different spellings here. It's like random whether you're going to get the exact spelling you want. Some notes have 2 spellings, some notes have 3 spellings, right? And it may or may not give you the exact spelling you want. Maybe I wanted C sharp, C natural, E flat, and it might be C sharp, C natural, E flat. It might be I could press J all day long and never get that combination, right? But you can use J. But the other thing you can do is select the whole thing and then say Tools, Respell Pitches. And it's going to apply its own algorithm to think what it thinks is the most logical spelling. To be honest, this algorithm makes very little sense to me. I've looked at the code. I sort of understand a little bit, or understood at one time what it was doing, but let's see what it chooses. All right, so it has chosen, I don't know, I think that algorithm doesn't fix these special accidentals. It thinks if you put one of those special accidentals there, you must have really meant it. So it didn't change that. Well, that's odd, actually. It gave me totally the wrong note. Isn't that the wrong note? To me, that's the wrong note. D flat, and then when I redo it, that says it's a C sharp. Oh, look at that. It says in the status bar it's a C sharp, but what's showing up is this other thing. So there's apparently a bug in the respell pitches command where if you've applied one of these fancy accidentals, it doesn't do it right. So that's another reason maybe not to rely on that command. But I don't know. I mean, I said I thought I wanted this to be E flat. It does things how it wants. However, I'm going to do my own, so I'm going to undo that. If I know I want all my accidentals spelled with flats, I'm going to give you a little trick here. I'm going to use the up arrow. Let me think about this. Yes, I'm going to go up arrow. I'm going to do it twice. And now I'm going to go down twice. So what did this do? What it did, by going up arrow, it respelled all my accidentals with sharps. But it actually changed the pitch. It raised the pitch. But then when I hit down arrow, it lowered the pitch again and respelled with flats. So if I know I have a passage that's spelled mostly with sharps and I want to respell it mostly with flats, that trick of hitting up arrow, sometimes just once is enough, sometimes twice, as it sort of depends on what the passage is like. But the idea is to get it to the point where it's had to respell all its accidentals using sharps. So you hit up arrow a couple times, then down arrow a couple of times. You'll be right back to the same pitches, but a different spelling. Here, now I'll go the other direction. Down, down, up, up. And now I have this spelling in which this is a B sharp and this is a D sharp. So down, down, up, up will respell everything with sharps. Up, up, down, down will respell everything with flats. And if it's in the key, like the C sharp was, or the C sharp here is, or the G sharp there is, then the accidental will be removed. If that had been spelt as an A flat before, which it might have been, I don't remember. So anyhow, actually I thought that was a G flat at one point, but obviously I changed it. So that's something to know about accidentals, this idea that you can respell things a variety of different ways. There's a lot of other things to talk about with accidentals that are worth knowing, and the most important one that I always have to point out is this one. Oops. So, I'm going to enter some quarter notes. All right, this note right here. First note of the second measure. What note is that? It's a C sharp. How do I know that? Well, it's C sharp in the key signature. It was C natural in this measure, but it's C sharp in this measure because the bar line cancels the accidental. That is all absolutely correct. Anyone who knows how to read music notation will eventually figure that out, that is supposed to be a C sharp. Eventually being the key word. Sight reading, this is going to go wrong almost all the time. So we need courtesy accidentals. I say we need them. They're called courtesy accidentals, but they are not really optional. You absolutely must be in the habit of adding courtesy accidentals in situations like this. If we had an accidental in one measure, and I see some comments here, I'm going to finish my thought about courtesy accidentals, then take a look. So one way to add courtesy accidentals after the fact is select that note and then go ahead and apply the sharp here. Because I'm not in note input mode, the sharp sign applies to the current note. If I was entering that note, let me delete that note. If I wanted to enter that note right now, then I would say sharp, which I now know is Alt-W, C, and it will let me enter the C sharp while I'm entering the notes. So you can enter the courtesy accidentals while you're in note input mode, just enter them. So if you're copying music right to left, this method of using the toolbar buttons is great, because then you don't have, or using the shortcuts that you define is great, because you don't have to worry about whether it's a courtesy accidental or a real accidental. That C sharp will be added because you said you wanted to add it. When I'm composing though, I'm constantly changing things, so I don't worry about my courtesy accidentals while I'm entering the music, because I might be changing things around later. Those courtesy accidentals might not be needed. So I'll go through the score later and add them. But I'm also lazy and careless. So I'm not going to rely on my own ability to find all the places. Instead, I'm going to use a plugin. Plugin, you see accidentals, add courtesy accidentals. You ready? Boom, there it is. The C sharp just showed up. It went through the whole score, actually, found everywhere a courtesy accidental was needed and added it. Its rule for adding them is to add them the next measure. But if you use this configure courtesy accidentals, then you have all these other things where you can look 2 measures ahead or all the way up to the next double bar line. You can put accidentals on all notes. You can also have an option to put them in parentheses. So those are all some things to know. Now this plugin is not installed, and download plugins. And while that's happening, let me grab the thing and paste it in. So courtesy, add remove courtesy accidentals. Here we go. So I'm going to grab the link here. Come on. No, I didn't want to. I just wanted to grab the link. Didn't want to go here. For those of you who are maybe excruciatingly slow. So, oops, I want my chat window, which I popped out. Courtesy accidental plugin. There we go. All right. So, beginning minute. Why do we use flats instead of sharps? Is that so? There is a whole question there, and about musical use of flats and sharps that I do actually want to talk about. So let me. Well, that's fine. I did the courtesy accidental. Let me just move on. And I do want to talk about why different notes might be flat versus sharp. And the best way I know to do this is, let me create myself a new score. And I'll go ahead and put it. It is not about. So I actually, Mark, was your question specifically about for keys, like the key of A flat versus the key of G sharp, or is it about accidentals in general? I guess the answers are all kind of related. Boy, this is just painful today for some reason. It might be because I'm running this alpha version, which is like slower than the regular version, but it's not normally this slow. Let me write out a scale for us. A, B, C sharp, and because I'm used to doing it my way, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to try to remember Alt W, F, Alt W, G, and then A. All right, that there is an A major scale, right? Let me write out another A major scale. A, B, Alt Q, D. And then D, E, and then Alt Q, G, Alt Q, A, and then Alt equals A. All right, this guy, that's an A major scale if you're only listening to it, right? But if you're looking at it, you see it's spelt crazily. This doesn't look like a scale because we've got A, B, D flat, D natural. So we skipped right over the letter C, and now we've got two Ds. And then we have an E, and then we skip right over the letter F, and we've got a G. And then we've got two A's in a row, A flat, A natural. It doesn't look like a scale. This confuses the heck out of people. So this is a reason when you're spelling a scale, you have to be correct about the spelling. So if you're using a key that has sharps in it, you have to spell it with sharps. If it's a key that has flats in it, you better spell it with flats. The same thing applies there. Now, there are some keys like D flat. The key of D flat has 5 flats. The key of C sharp has 7 sharps. Well, sort of you take your pick which key you want to write in better. For me as a pianist, I'm used to reading all keys. I would rather see D flat than C sharp because 5 flats rather than 7 sharp. So I'm going to pick D flat. But saxophonists often will prefer C sharp because they're so used to reading sharps because their instruments transpose. So like this A scale, if I wanted a saxophonist to play something that sounds like an A scale, you actually have to write a C scale for them. And I can do that right here. I can go to staff part properties and tell it I want to change from piano to alto saxophone. And when I do this, oh, I'm transposing backwards. Am I? Yeah. Yeah, so now I'm in the key of I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Oh, because I entered those all as accidentals. So yeah, just if if you want a saxophonist to play what sounds like a C major scale, you're gonna have to write an A major scale for them. That's what I meant to say. So if you want it to sound like C major, you have to write A major. So they're used to seeing three more sharps, alto sax, this is, and baritone sax. They're used to seeing three more sharps in their key signatures. So they're used to seeing lots of sharps. So for them, and they're not used to seeing flats because all those flats go away. The key of E flat for alto saxophone becomes C. So they almost never see flats. They certainly don't ever see five of them. That never happens. So they would probably, many saxophonists, I should say, would rather see seven sharps than five flats. So that's another aspect to what Marc is asking about. But I think it's not actually what he's asking about. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think you mean, why would we use the key of E flat at all? Why is the key of E flat so such a popular key in certain genres of music? It's a very popular key in band music, any music that uses band instruments. By band instruments, I mean trumpets and saxophones and clarinets, woodwind instruments, woodwind and brass instruments that are typically used in marching bands and concert bands. Most of those instruments transpose. They're either E flat or B flat instruments, meaning they either add three sharps or two sharps to every key. So saxophonists hate it if you want to play music in D. If you play music in D, it's got two sharps for everyone else, but for a saxophonist, that's got five sharps. Now you're making them work hard to read. So saxophonists do not tend to like when you write in sharp keys because they have to add three more sharps, or the person writing the music for them has to. So when we're writing music to be played on saxophones, we typically, to make it easier on them, especially, well, all instruments really, but brass instruments in particular, because of the way the overtone series works, there's all this stuff going on. But a trumpet is perfectly in tune in B flat, and it's progressively less in tune in other keys. You can adjust to try to fix that, but it is perfectly in tune in B flat. So we write in B flat because it's easy for brass and woodwind instruments, and it's going to be the most in tune. So when we're writing music for brass bands, for jazz bands that incorporate trumpet and saxophone, we typically write in flat keys, just because it makes it easier for the trumpets and saxophones. It's not like it's that hard otherwise, but it makes a difference. And then as a pianist, so for me, I'm actually more used to playing in flat keys than I am in sharp keys at this point in my life, because I've probably played more jazz and more accustomed to sharp keys, because the tuning of a guitar, and I guess a mandolin, favors the key of C and or keys with like one sharp maybe. So yeah, so that's the transposing aspect is definitely the thing. So if I take, let me just get rid of this and just show you what I really wanted to show. If I write a C major scale, and I take that music, and it's a nice simple music for piano, but let's transpose this puppy for saxophone. Right click, come on, baby. Right click, and then I don't know why I'm going to style properties. There it is. Change instrument to alto sax, and we see now that they have to read the key of A. And on saxophone, see, the key of C on all woodwind instruments, as written, is just this. You lift up your fingers one at a time, basically, and you have a C major scale as written. So that's going to, on an alto sax, it's going to sound like E flat. So E flat, as it sounds, is the easiest instrument to play, is the easiest key for a saxophonist to play, because it's just lifting up your fingers one at a time. It's C major as they read it. So they love reading E flat because it's easy to play, easy to read. But if you want to play an A scale, it's going to mean using all these side keys and weird fingerings that are, just a little more awkward. You can't play the other scales as quickly as you can play the native scale for your instrument. So, so while we're talking about keys, so mandolin. So mandolin, if I'm not mistaken, is that tuned like a viola? Is it C, the low string on a mandolin? I should know this, but I don't. I remember thinking that it's tuned like some other instrument, though. Um, or is it tuned like a violin? Is G the low note? I could look it up, but you could also tell me. I'll let you answer that, Mark, what the strings are on a mandolin. I can also add a mandolin instrument here to my score, and okay, tune like violin. So G, D, A, E going up. All right. So the idea I talked about, like spelling a scale and spelling accidentals with if you're writing out a scale without a key signature. Here, I didn't need any accidentals because they're in the key signature. But what if I needed some passing tones? And so now we're getting into some musical things. If I want here's a little passage. Let me play it for you. That passage, 1, 2, somewhere between 2 and 3, then 3, somewhere between 2 and 3, then 3. This note here, I spelt as B sharp. Well, this is a traditional way of doing things. When you're dealing with B sharp, you might think, well, people don't like B sharp, they'd rather see a C natural. But if I want to respell that as a C natural, what it does is it requires you to then put a sharp sign on your C sharp. So, and when it was spelt as a B sharp, I didn't need the sharp sign here. So spelling, when you have a chromatic passage like this going up, it's traditional to spell with sharps. All the notes in the cracks between the scale tones. It's traditional to spell with sharps on the way up because it simplifies things in that you don't then need to cancel that. Like if, whoops, I didn't want to, if I spelt it as a C, now I need to cancel that C with a C sharp on the next note. It just makes the music more cluttered that way. So even though normally we don't prefer seeing B sharp, this is a situation where we maybe would. And certainly if it was anywhere else, if it was like, say, C sharp, D, D sharp, E. I'm going to want the D sharp instead of E flat here for the same reason. If I called this E flat, then I need an E natural there. So we spell with sharps on the way up. Similarly, on the way down, E, E flat, D, C sharp, we spell with flats on the way down because if I spelt that with a sharp, now I need the natural sign here. So this is pretty traditional. When you have notes that are in the cracks between the notes in the key, on the way up, we spell with sharps. On the way down, we spell with flats. That's the typical thing. But it's worth noting that the key, I mean, if that note is just what's called a passing tone, like if the chord here is an A chord here. By the way, you hear it playing back the chord. That's because I'm using MuseScore 3.5, the alpha version, which plays back chord symbols now. So, of course, it's playing it back with a saxophone sound, which is because I have a saxophone instrument. I can change that, though, and I'm going to. I go to the mixer and open up the saxophone channel, and now I have my chord symbol channel here. And I can change that to piano. Or is it grand piano? I forget what the dang thing is called. We'll just go back to the beginning. Grand piano. Good enough. So now it'll play the chord with a piano sound. So if your chord is an A, then, this note's not in the chord. It doesn't matter. However, what if the chord at that point in the song was actually an A minor chord? Well, now I don't spell this as B sharp anymore. I spell it as, even though I'm going up, I'm going to spell it as C natural because it's the note that's in the chord. Now, why is there a C sharp here? I don't know. There just is. But the point is, if the note that you're trying to spell is part of the chord, you spell it that way. So like on this example where it was a descending line and I said, oh, spell it with flats, Well, that's all well and good, but if the chord at that point is B7, and then I have E7, and then I have A, let's put a chord here. So this little passage here, the melody line's going down, you maybe should spell it with flats, but because it's a B7 here, probably we should respell it as a D sharp. Whether you do this or not depends on how much context the person reading this is going to be seeing. If this is a lead sheet for a saxophonist in a jazz context and he sees that B7 chord symbol, definitely spell it D sharp, because he's going to see the D sharp and the B7 that's going to click in his head. If you spell it as E flat, there's just something that just doesn't click about seeing an E flat while you're seeing a B7 chord. This is especially true for me as a pianist because I'm trying to play that chord on the piano while I'm playing that melody, and it just doesn't gel right if I'm playing a B7 and someone tells me to play an E flat. It doesn't feel right. Now, if this is a saxophone part in a band composition, then they don't necessarily know that there's a B7 happening there. So, so if I'm writing, let me create a concert band piece. So in my concert band piece here, I have my alto saxophone, and if I write a D sharp here, did I hit the up arrow? Maybe I didn't. Maybe it's locking up. Maybe it's crashing. I don't know what's happening. Hello. All right. I'm going to say all parts down. A. Then all down again. There we go. So let me make this actually a whole note. I think now I can just press 7. There we go. That was added like at 3.3-ish or so, that you could change multiple notes duration at once. What did I do wrong? Oh, because they're not all the same transposition, right? This guy, so I wanted a B7 in the key of A. So I'm out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to concert pitch mode, and it's a D7 I want. I want this guy to be a C. There we go. There we go. All right, now I can go back to transpose mode. I could have tried to do the transposition in my head, but I'm sure I'd have gotten flustered and confused myself. So I have a B7 chord, and this note is a D sharp, and that's all well and good. And maybe, in fact, let me go back to when it was E, D sharp, then D. I don't know. Let me just go back to the way it was. I don't want to confuse myself or anyone else more than I already am. The point is, in the score, when I'm looking at this with concert pitch on, I definitely want this, because now for me, reading the score as the arranger, as the composer, I like to work with concert pitch on. I want to look at this and say, hey, look at this, it's a D7 chord. There is no way I'm going to want that to look like a G flat. I don't care if the line's going up or down. This is a D7 chord. I absolutely want this to be F sharp. However, in the saxophone part over here, he's not looking at any of that. He's just looking at a note. So the saxophone in the part, I'm going to want to spell that note the way it should be spelled, given that I'm just looking at this part. So if it's a line that's going down, I'm going to spell it with a flat. So if I change this spelling to E flat, unfortunately, by pressing J, when I now go back to the score, we'll see that, gee, it changed the spelling in the score also. Well, we have a special command in MuseScore, and it's not actually about score versus part, but it's about, I'm going to change this back now by pressing J. This time, I'm going to go back to the part, and instead of pressing J, I'm going to press Control J? Yes, Control J. Control J changed it here in the part, but it actually left it as F sharp in the score. It wasn't really just about score versus part, though. It's really about concert pitch. So even in the score, if I turn concert pitch off, I see the E flat. When I turn concert pitch back on, I see the F sharp. So if you're making a change to a part in the enharmonic spelling, just to make it easier to read, and you know it's the wrong spelling harmonically, you know you don't want it that way when you're looking at it in concert pitch, or you don't want it that way, you only want it that way for the benefit of the person reading the part, then use Control J to change the spelling, and it will only change it in transpose mode, not in concert pitch mode, or vice versa. So those are most of the things that I wanted to talk about relating to accidentals. I should mention, though, because there was one other thing, there's always other things, but that I didn't talk about because, frankly, it's not my world, and so I'm not that familiar with it, but I guess I want to show it to you anyhow, just because it comes up, and someday someone's going to come looking at this, and they're going to, where is my one that's still in C? I guess I don't have one. Let me give a new one in the key of C. There we go. And that is, under the accidentals palette, you see just these accidentals. Oh, and see, if you like your courtesy accidentals if you like your courtesy accidentals to not just be a natural sign, but to also put them in parentheses, there you go. The official modern rule is that we don't use parentheses anymore, because once upon a time music was fairly simple. There weren't a lot of accidentals, so there weren't a lot of courtesy accidentals, and so it was okay to put the courtesy accidentals in parentheses. Modern music is so complex, so full of accidentals, so full of the need for courtesy accidentals, that parentheses just get in the way. The only time we ever use parentheses in modern music is the following situation. I got a whole line full of 16th notes. C sharp, D. All right. We just had this whole complicated mess of notes with a C sharp at the beginning of the measure, and now I've got this other C sharp here later on in the measure. Are people going to remember, realistically, that it's C sharp? They've just played so much stuff, they might not remember. So sometimes we go ahead and put a courtesy accidental within the same measure, and then we usually do put it in parentheses, because then the people who did remember are otherwise going to second guess themselves. Oh, did I get it wrong? So that's kind of a thing. All right, so the thing that though I wanted to show about this is I'm going to press more on the accidentals palette. And look at all these. What are these? These are all different microtonal accidentals. So the deal is we have C sharp, we have D. Well, there's also notes like between C and C sharp. So if I take this C and say I want a quarter sharp, or a half sharp, which is it's called a quarter tone because this is called a half step, right? From C to C sharp is a half step. So from C to C half sharp is a quarter tone sharp. There we go. So I don't think this plays back by default. Yeah, it didn't play back by default. But what we can do is go into the inspector and play with the tuning here and turn the tuning up to, I think, 25 cents, I think is. There you go. It was somewhere between. Because because I think 50 is a half step. I'm about to find out after I do this again. So let me play this passage. Because 50 might be a quarter. So let's find out. I click this guy, and then again I change its tuning this time to 50. Let's see if this sounds exactly like the sharp or not. Ah, that was the quarter step. So I actually went too much before. So 50, I guess, is a quarter step. So that note will now play back halfway between C and C sharp. These microtonal is another term for them. Microtonal accidentals are used. They're used in some modern music where we're just trying to get some of these sounds, but they're very traditional in the music of some cultures. So like the Middle East, Turkish music, Indian music. There's music of areas that are like Asia, East, I guess Western Asia, the portions of Asia closer to Europe and the portions of Europe closer to Asia, basically, tend to use these microtonal accidentals. So I fixed that tuning by using the inspector. There is, however, a plugin. So I want to go back to my plugins, and this time find the microtonal. No? Is that not what it's called? Accidental tuner, this one here. I think this maybe. All right, let's try it. I'm gonna post this into the chat, which isn't out. Tuner plugin for. All right, so this plugin, if you've never installed a plugin before, it's not particularly hard. Since I haven't used this one before, I'm not exactly sure what all will happen, but what generally happens is there's a zip file that you will usually download, and you're going to put it, instead of in your scores folder, you will see that you have a so under MuseScore 3, you will have a plugins folder right next to your scores folder, and then you can place the plugin there. And then this is just a zip file. So after it downloads, you're going to have to open the zip file and extract it into that same folder. So, oh wow, look at all that. I think I've extract all, and it's going to place it. What the heck is this? No idea. I hit some button I didn't mean to hit. Oh, I just opened the image, I guess. So I'm going to extract all those files. And once I do that, the plugin will be available to MuseScore to install. It won't be installed yet, but it will be available. And so what I mean by available is, as soon as this is done, there we go, I go back to MuseScore, and hello, jeez. I go back to MuseScore, go to the plugins menu, plugin manager. And I see that I have duplicates of some of these because I actually have two different plugins folders because I'm doing things a little bit strangely. But I have a Google Drive folder that I'm sharing between multiple computers, and so some plugins I have installed multiple places. So I'm looking for that thing I just installed, and now I'm not seeing it. So I don't know. Oh, reload plugins. Let me try this guy. See if this does it. So there might be more to this plugin, but normally it would just be the case that it would show up here. You normally don't have to like restart MuseScore or anything, but I don't know this plugin. so I don't know what's going on with it. But I will say that the plugin supposedly will allow you to then run the plugin, and it will find all the notes that have these microtonal accidentals installed on them, and will tune them for you. That's the theory. Um, so because it's all just sort of hanging up right now, and I don't really know how it works anyhow, I'm just going to leave that to you to experiment with if you're interested in. So, those are now the things that I want to talk about regarding accidentals. As you see, there's kind of a lot to say about them, and I'm sure there's things that I didn't say that could have been said. Plugins reloaded. My God, that took a long time. I'm still add courtesy accidentals. I don't see the plugin in the list there, and I don't know why, so I'm just not going to sweat it. But I will trust that because it was just being discussed on the forum today, and apparently it does work. Um, so yeah, I'm going to wrap up. As I mentioned last week, I want to start bringing in the Google Summer of Code students, Isaac, Kumar, and Sergius. Um, and next week is going to be Kumar Kartike, who is, his project is a little unique. His goal is to not change anything that you will see about how MuseScore, well, it's not his goal, but it's, if he does his job right, nothing about what you see in MuseScore is going to change. It's going to make MuseScore easier for the rest of us to then develop new features in, and in particular, it's going to help with some of the accessibility features that we've been implementing that you've seen me talk about. So it's a lot of under the hood stuff, but it's, if you have any programming background at all, it would be kind of fascinating. If you don't, well, we'll make sure we keep it interesting anyhow. But it's a really interesting project from a programming perspective, and it is unusual in that it doesn't connect to a particular feature. We've had 2 or 3 other Google Summer of Code projects in previous summers that were like that also. There was no particular feature that was expected to come of it. It was just doing some things within the code. I don't know that we've had one in the last couple of seasons though, but we anyhow. So that's what we're going to see this next week is Kumar talking about his project to re-implement some of the data structures that define how a score is represented. So I don't see any other questions or anything in here. So again, I think I'm going to wrap up here, and I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy, and we'll see you all next week, and we'll have Kumar as our guest. So spread the word, and see you next time. Bye.